The opinions expressed in this show are the views of the host and not necessarily that of WTRW, 94.3 The Talker, or the Bold Gold Media Group.
The following presentation is paid for by Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate, who is solely responsible for its content. Portions transcribed.
All Century 21 real estate offices are independently owned and operated.
Good morning. I'm Jackie Ruddy, broker of Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate. Welcome to the Real Estate Roundtable on 94.3 FM The Talker. I am here with my co-host and husband, Pat Devaney.
Good morning, Jackie.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very good, thank you. We have with us Hank Lerner, PAR, that's the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors, Chief Legal Officer, and Bill Lublin, 2024 President-elect of Pennsylvania Association of Realtors, which we will refer to often during the show as PAR. Also, the CEO of Century 21 Advantage Gold. There's 9 offices in Pennsylvania. Hi, guys.
Hi, Jackie. I didn't want to talk over you. Morning.
Good morning. Thanks for being here with us. We are here every Saturday at 11 a.m., Sunday at 11:30 a.m., where we talk real estate. We have an exceptional real estate office with many full-time realtors who've been listing, selling, and appraising real estate for over 50 years.
During the week, feel free to email us with any questions you have at questions@jruddy.com. That's questions@jruddy.com. Or you can give us a call at 570-344-6724. And when you go to jruddy.com, click on the webcam tab and take a look at our webcam, and you get a live view of Dunmore Corners, and we get thousands of hits a month on that camera.
View our listings, search the MLS listings, and listen to archive radio shows by going to mobile-friendly jruddy.com, where we also have all the popular podcast apps that we feature this radio show on. And remember to check us out on social media. We're practically everywhere.
So what are we talking about this week, Jackie?
We are going to talk about the NAR lawsuits and the settlement, NAR being the National Association of Realtors. They just settled some major lawsuits, and we have with us, once again, Hank Lerner, PAR Chief Legal Officer, and Bill Lublin, the 2024 President-elect of PAR. Gentlemen, if I could just have a brief history of who you are and what you do every day of your life, and so that the listeners know you're calling in from your offices and you're off-site, but if you can just give us a little summary of who you are, we'd appreciate it.
I'm Hank Lerner, PAR's Chief Legal Officer. I'm an attorney with the association, and I've worked here for close to 24 years, actually, in a variety of different positions, legal and not legal, depending on the year and the project that I've been working on. One of the main things that we do here is we produce a library of standardized real estate forms. So many of the forms that you and your agents use in your office are produced by PAR. The things that the clients in your marketplace look at are often PAR created forms. And we also operate a legal hotline for the benefit of our members who have questions about law, ethics, forms-related things. So we do a lot of compliance and a lot of practice guidance for our members here from PAR as a big part of my job, which is obviously one of the things we're going to be quite concerned about as things move forward under the terms of the settlement agreement.
Thank you. And Bill?
My name is Bill Lublin. As you mentioned, I'm a working broker owner as CEO of Century 21 Advantage Gold that we service Philadelphia and parts of South Jersey. I have been in MLS volunteer leadership for about 45 years and have the pleasure of being the president-elect of the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors and served last year as NAR's MLS and data management liaison.
Wow. You're a busy guy.
9
I could
offices.
bore you longer, but I'm trying not to.
No, that's okay. 9 offices. God bless you.
And in southern Jersey as well as Pennsylvania. That's amazing. Okay, gentlemen, you're here today to talk to us and our listeners about the National Association of Realtors. They've been headline news for a long time. couple months back, there was a major settlement. There were lawsuits popping up all over the country against realtors and companies and NAR. Can you tell me a little bit about where these lawsuits came from and why they were happening? And then we'll get into the reasons that National Association of Realtors felt that they should go to settlement.
The issue with these lawsuits really is about compensation for buyer's agents from seller's agents, the offer of cooperative compensation that fuels the broker cooperative. Frankly, and I hate to be cynical about it, the reason for the lawsuits is because class action lawsuits generate millions and millions of dollars in settlement for the attorneys that create the class. So the first one that came to fruition over a 5-year period was the Sitzer-Burnett trial in Missouri, in which 8 jury members and 1 judge determined that consumers had been damaged by having listing agents compensate buyer's agents through the offer of cooperative compensation. Now, as you guys know, and as I know, commission has nothing to do with the sales price of a property. That's more supply and demand, condition of the home, location of the home, the normal market drivers. But there was a lot of bad information. There was a strong defense mounted, but in the final analysis, the judge made what was called a per se ruling, which charged the jury kind of to find NAR and the defending companies guilty. So when that happened and an award was made, there immediately sprang up copycat lawsuits all over the United States because, again, class action lawsuits are really, really big business. And they generate class action attorneys. Their settlements are in the ranges of hundred millions to billions of dollars. And in this case, the finding against the defendants in the Sitzer-Burnett trial, of whom NAR was one, and the MLSs that followed the NAR MLS bylaws and a number of other brokerages was a substantial amount. So having lost that trial, NARB, and it was over a 5-year period, by the way, before it went to trial. Having lost that trial, NAR began all of the legal steps that happen after you lose a trial, objections to what happened during the trial, objections to form, getting ready to apply an appeal. But all of this is very, very expensive. And so while that was going on, a business decision was made, even though you know, I know, every real estate practitioner knows nothing was done inappropriately, incorrectly, or illegally by the practitioners or the associations or the MLSs, that it was more prudent to settle than it would have been to continue the fight because these are very, very expensive court cases to battle.
All right. So to break this down for somebody who knows nothing about real estate, the case is about I'm a seller, right? And I pay a commission to my realtor. What's the problem here? Was it the buyer's agent? We really need to break this down for people who don't understand real estate.
Well, the premise was that sellers were charging more for their homes because they had to compensate the buyer agent. Oh. Now, as a guy who took his first appraisal class 55 years ago or 45 years ago, I can tell you the one thing that I've never heard mentioned in talking about how to develop value for property is a real estate commission. We talk about size, construction, the age, layout, functional obsolescence, locational obsolescence. What we don't talk about is commission. And the premise in this instance was that if the seller didn't have to pay a buyer agent a commission, they would have taken less for their home. And that could only be a a theory developed by someone who had never met a seller in their life. Because you guys have sold a lot of property. I know you do a tremendous job in the Poconos. And you know as well as I do that a seller, when relieved of an expense, says, oh, great, that's more for me. They don't change their price.
You know, I've been watching the news and everything. That is the best explanation I've ever heard of all of this, what's going on. I've heard, and I'm a realtor. When I listen to the news and I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about. That was the best explanation, what you just said.
Well, the media has been absolutely hostile towards realtors and the real estate profession. And I can't say that, there have been very nice stories written about anything and about any of this since the news broke.
Well, and all the information's inaccurate.
It is.
I mean, I have to tell you, I only had 2 digital subscriptions personally.
Now we're bashing media.
One was the Wall Street Journal and one was the New York Times, because I thought that they were old-school journalists that checked their facts, that made sure they had it right before they said anything. I've had to let both of them lapse because I would sit and read an article and I would go, that's not how that works. That's not true. That's inaccurate. The statements, you guys know as I do, being practitioners, being realtors, there is no such thing as a standard commission. Every contract that we have signed by a consumer has on it in bold the commissions are negotiable. There are statistical averages for what a home seller pays in commission, but that's by adding up all of the fees of all of the hundreds and hundreds of business models in the real estate industry and then dividing them by the sale price to come up with a statistical number. But a statistical commission is not a standard commission. I don't know what in my company, I set the commission structure. And my agents go and negotiate to that commission structure and are subject to the management of our company, just as I'm sure in your business, you guys decide what your company is going to charge and how you're going to charge it, and your agents then go out and meet with buyers and sellers, explain their services, agree on expectations, and sign a contract where the consumer is comfortable with what they're paying for what they're getting in terms of professional service.
Right. So I've often called it a policy. I like your explanation much better, but I would walk around and say, this is my policy, and I can have a policy. And I'm thinking about 2 different things here. First, I'd like to point out the fact that it's been proven over and over and over again that when people sell their home, sellers list a home with a realtor, we get more than if they were to do it on their own for sale by owner. And also, I want to make that point, but if the buyer's lawsuit is saying that they paid more for the house because the seller had to pay a commission, a real estate commission that paid for the buyer agent, then if the seller didn't have to pay the commission, am I missing something here by asking this question is what I'm trying to say. If the seller didn't have to pay that commission, but the buyer had to pay the commission themselves, wouldn't it amount to the same? Well,
what the problem would be, and there was a study done on this 2 years ago by an independent group in D.C., the problem is that the amount of commission paid by a home seller for both their agent and to allow the transaction to cover the expense of the buyer agent is nominal. It's a small amount. But for the buyer, it could be anywhere from 12 to 40% more cash needed in closing costs. And I'm sure it's no different in Dunmore than it is in Philadelphia that
they don't have it.
Right. When people are buying homes, they typically start their process as soon as they have enough money to do the minimum, unless they're exceptionally wealthy human beings. And this would be a burden for them. So the premise of these lawsuits makes me scratch my head as a real estate professional. I never, and by the way, as I'm also an investor, and I've bought and sold hundreds of properties, always happy to pay the buyer to have an agent to guide them through. I truly believe, and not just because I'm a realtor, but because I've watched it over the years, that consumers are best served by having professional guidance, whether they are selling or buying a home for their primary residence or as an investment. We have a unique combination of cross-disciplinary information to provide them with, from the commute times to where traffic gets jammed up, to where the sun comes up, where the best fishing holes are, where there are good restaurants. All of those things, along with financing, some guidance on using the amazing standard forms library that we have in Pennsylvania, that our chief counsel is a custodian and guardian of. I mean, we have one of the best standard form libraries in the entire United States.
Agreed.
That protects everyone.
Absolutely. And in it, both our standard forms committee and our legal staff work diligently to make sure that they are as clear and concise, and that things that might be of concern are emphasized, bolded, checked. So our consumers, as I said, know what they're getting into. But the decision to settle was a business decision. It was not an admission of. I did want to, make that point. Of our doing anything wrong.
No, right. No wrongdoing.
There's a part of me that hates that we settled.
Yes.
Because I know that we're right, and that the premise of the lawsuit was wrong, and that these 9 people, these 8 jurors, and this one judge in Missouri got it absolutely wrong. But as a business person, I think that NAR did a really smart thing, because by creating this settlement, they covered over 1 million members. They covered any of the association-owned MLSs. They covered the local and state associations that were involved. And the only members that were not covered in that were companies that did over $2 billion worth of business. And even those members were given a roadmap to settlement that was negotiated during this period of time. So I think that the changes are changes that, we're very resilient as an industry. And they're changes that we will work with to help continue to make home buying and home selling in the United States the most efficient marketplace in the world. I mean, I've been lucky. I've traveled to Dubai, to the UK, of course, to Canada to teach real estate. The model of our real estate industry is admired all over the world. Buyers, because of our broker cooperative, buyers know where they can go to find the greatest number of properties, and sellers know where they can go to find the greatest numbers of buyers, so that each of them has the best opportunity to have a good transaction with good terms, minimal chance of fall through, and minimal risk of litigation. That's what our system has done for us.
Agreed. Bill Lublin, 2024 President-elect. Also on the line with us is Hank Lerner, PAR's Chief Legal Officer. We're going to be headed towards a break, and we're going to talk all about this and more after the break. But before we go, Pat, would you like to review a listing, please?
Yes, we have a mixed-use building. It's in the heart of Moscow at the intersection of 435 and 690 or Church Street. It's at 100 Main Street in Moscow for $945,000. This large building is in very good condition. It's got 4 commercial occupancies on the first floor and 5 apartments upstairs. It's got plenty of parking in the rear. This is a high visibility location. It has public water and sewer and very reasonable taxes of less than $5,000 a year. That's the kind of taxes you pay down in Philly, isn't it? No. Oh, I'm confused. I'm sorry. There is great rental income from the units, and the possibilities are endless. That's a mixed-use building of 4 commercial units and 5 apartments at 100 Main Street in Moscow for $945,000, and that's listed by Karen Kashuba of our office.
Our special sponsor this week is 1031 Corp. They help real estate investors defer capital gains when selling and reinvesting in business use or investment property. 1031 Corp is the middleman you need to help you complete a 1031 exchange, and over the 3 decades, they have mastered how to keep the exchange process easy for you. Their exchange experts will educate you on 1031 exchanges, review your situation, and walk you through the entire process. If you own an investment or business property, whether it is residential or commercial, contact 1031 Corp to learn how you can exchange into a property that works better for you while deferring the capital gains and depreciation recapture so you can keep your hard-earned equity working in your next property. Hold on for more Real Estate Roundtable with Century 21 Jack Ready Real Estate and 94.3 The Talker. We'll resume in just a moment. When considering to sell or buy a home, why choose Century 21 Jack Ready Real Estate? Let me tell you why. 70% of home buyers settle for the first agent they meet, and many regret it. 90% of home sellers hire an agent, but was it the right choice? Don't have agent remorse. I'm Jackie Ruddy, and I've been in and around the real estate business for most of my life. And at Century 21 Jack Ready Real Estate, we've been selling real estate for half a century. But we do not do it halfway. You deserve better than average. Average doesn't help you. We know it's all about you and what you need. Century 21 is the #1 in brand awareness, is the most recognized name in real estate, and is the most respected in the industry. In this market, if you dream big, you need to move fast. So it makes perfect sense to contact Century 21 Jack Ready Real Estate, 570-344-6724, and visit jready.com. That's JRUDDY.com. We are back with more Real Estate Roundtable with Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate and 94.3 FM The Talker. I'm Jackie Ruddy, broker, and with Pat Devaney, my husband, fellow realtor.
And we're back, and I'm paying very close attention.
This is a topic that we needed to bring to the listeners' attention, our audience. It's a very important topic. Today we have Bill Lublin, 2024 President-elect of the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors, and Hank Lerner, PAR's Chief Legal Officer. And I just want to say, Hank, you and your team provide wonderful legal help to myself, the brokerage, my agents, and all the members of the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. And we are so thankful to have you. You really help us tremendously with all of your knowledge, experience, the standard forms, your webinars. You're always trying to educate and assist us and guide us in what we do every day, and we are very thankful for that.
Well, I appreciate that, Jackie, and I'm just going to ask, make sure I get the podcast link here so my boss can hear that when it airs later.
Oh, sure, you absolutely. So, Hank, we heard from Bill at the first half of the show regarding the NAR, the National Association lawsuit and settlement. I'd like to get your perspective on the whole matter, please.
Yeah, so this will seem a little bit weird to have a lawyer start off a sentence by saying, I really like to sort of simplify this and try to dumb it down as much as I can, because that seems very much out of sort, right?
It does.
But I will say that in addition to, talking to other lawyers about this and talking to our members, all of whom have a pretty good understanding of sort of the way things have traditionally been done, I obviously get a lot of questions on my own from family, friends, people outside the real estate industry who are seeing the headlines and trying to figure out, like, basically, where did this come from and what does it mean? So kind of the basic question that you asked at the beginning. So for those folks, I've really tried to come up with what I think is a very, very basic explanation that kind of sets the scene both for where the lawsuit came from, but also for what we think may be coming next. So here's what I think is the simple breakdown. When you look at the job of a listing broker, the person who works with a seller to sell a house, they really have two jobs. One of those jobs is working with the seller to sell the house. So coming up with a list price, making sure that maybe there's some work that's done to best position it to be able to be sold, doing the negotiations, doing all the paperwork, all the stuff that goes along on the seller side of the transaction. But there's a second job that's kind of implied into this process that people don't really think about, which is that the second job of the listing broker is to also find the buyer. Because it doesn't matter how much work you do with the seller. If there's not a buyer who shows up and says, hey, I'd like to buy that house, or ideally maybe multiple buyers who show up and have an interest in the house, it's not going to sell because there needs to be two parties. So that listing broker has to work in some way to figure out how to get one or more buyers interested in the property to try to actually get the transaction to happen. So when you think about the fees that a seller traditionally has paid to a listing broker, there's a fee that is negotiated, and then the way that traditionally that business model has evolved is that the listing broker has essentially said, well, look, I've got two jobs here, one directly working with you, the other trying to find buyers. But, there's a lot of other people out there who also represent buyers. So if I have the opportunity to sort of, let's say, outsource that job to other brokers, let's take advantage of it. Because if we can get other brokers involved here, other brokers actually working to find buyers for your property, it's going to make it more efficient. And what's the best way to get other brokers interested in helping me out here? Well, it's to offer to pay them something, right? So I'm going to take some of the money that you're paying me as your listing broker, and I'm going to offer that to a buyer broker who's able to show up here with an interested buyer. So it's basically kind of taking the fee that the seller pays, subdividing that fee into two parts, one that the listing agent would keep for helping the seller work with the seller side of the transaction, and the other side would then go to the buyer side of the transaction, which might also be you, because sometimes an agent in your brokerage finds that buyer, but it also could be an agent in another brokerage who shows up with that buyer. So sharing the fee is helpful to your own client because you share the fee with that other broker. The genesis of the lawsuit was to say that the plaintiffs believed that this model where the listing broker kind of pre-negotiated that second part of the fee, pre-negotiated how much would be offered to a buyer broker, they believed was inefficient and inappropriate and unfair, and that basically buyers should have more involvement in negotiating the fee that's paid on the buyer side of the transaction. Whether that's good or bad in the overall scheme of things, of course, will be addressed through the market as things move on here. But the idea isn't that listing brokers can't offer that fee anymore. You can still handle your fees the same way you do today, where the listing broker collects a certain amount of money and offers a certain amount of that then to a potential buyer broker. The nuances of how it happens will change, which we could talk about later if you feel it's important, but it can still happen just in a different way. But also there's an expectation that in at least some number of transactions, the buyer will end up maybe more directly negotiating that fee with their broker and or with the seller to get the broker's fee paid on the buyer side of the transaction. So buyers brokers would still be paid. They would still be paid to help a buyer find a house. The way that they get paid, however, may end up changing in the future in a way that, as Bill said, may end up being somewhat more inefficient and possibly more burdensome on buyers.
Financially burdensome on buyers.
No, absolutely. And I'm going to say, I understand that I answer some of my questions from sort of the ivory tower of the legal perspective because I'm not a practitioner. As was mentioned, real estate is very vibrant, very flexible, has a tendency to adapt very well to new market conditions.
Yes.
Right. Very resilient. So it may be that it becomes a financial burden on buyers who are asked to pay fees on their own. It may also be that a new kind of normal develops in the marketplace where these are negotiated in ways that the fees are still paid on the seller side of the transaction, just not the way that they have been. So, I know that where I'm sitting, we're focused on our forms, our practice advice, and it's really going to be all about choice and negotiation and making sure that all of the options are available to try to minimize that burden on the buyers. Not about saying, well, this is the one way it always used to happen, which of course is not true because it used to happen a lot of different ways. And then this is the one way it has to happen in the future. It's about saying it's always been negotiable. It's going to continue to be negotiable. It's just that the trends in certain markets may vary from the way they have been in the past.
Certainly, that's time will tell regarding all of this. And we thank you, both Bill Lublin, 2024 President-elect of Pennsylvania Association of Realtors, Hank Lerner, PAR's Chief Legal Officer. Would you please come back next week? We have so much more to discuss regarding this topic.
Absolutely.
You betcha.
Thank you so much. We honor our nation's heroes and we salute our fallen, and we give thanks to all on this Memorial Day. It's time to wrap up another enlightening episode of the Real Estate Roundtable with Century 21 Jack Ready Real Estate. Be sure to tune in next Saturday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 11:30 a.m. on 94.3 The Talker.